The NFL season may be over, but we're just getting started here with the XFL 3.0. 8 teams, 4 games. DraftKings has a 4-game slate, as well as showdown slates too, by the way. 4-game slates with some huge contests up top. And look, we got some names that you might be familiar with, man. These guys had some trouble in the NFL, and hey, they're a little bit older, but who knows how good they are at this point. They had some problems like...
Stay off the weed.
Let's just get into this, man. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Ellie, what's going on with you, man? How you doing?
Doing pretty good, dude. Just enjoying some time off since there's been no NFL. Actually, did we even get time off? We went straight into XFL. The Super Bowl was Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, starting Monday, I was already stalking the DraftKings site. I was already trying to find projections and all this shit. It's been this is undiscovered country. I mean, I know that XFL was around in 2020, and we've seen some CFL stuff, or I'm sorry, USFL stuff last year. But right now, I mean, there's not a lot of projections out there. There's not a lot of sites that are covering this. So I think there's a ton of opportunity for us to profit week one right out of the bat just by doing a little bit of research. And I think that's a huge deal. So Ellie, look, let's talk about rules real quick. So the way this show is going to go down, at least for week one, we might adjust for week two, but we're going to talk about the rules a little bit so that if you're not familiar with the XFL rules, we can at least kind of figure that out, because some things may make a difference DFS wise. Then we'll get into the differences with the DraftKings slate, how the positions are broken down, things like that, how the roster construction is. We'll jump into the first look where we just briefly kind of look at all these matchups, all 4 games, all 8 teams. Look at the Vegas lines, look at the quarterbacks, kind of get ourselves familiar with things. Jump into the breakdown where we go team by team. We might go position by position here and there. Then we'll build some lineups together. And I think that's just the way that this show is going to run down. If you've ever watched our show before, we like to keep things structured from the beginning of not even knowing what it is you're playing to by the end being able to build a lineup on your own. I think that's our goal for this. So right now, hit subscribe if you don't mind. We do have a Discord down below. You could scan that if you're watching on our TV, or in the description, you can click join Discord. It's free. We'll have depth charts. We'll be talking about lineups. We'll be talking about news as we get closer to this. We're recording this on Thursday night, so obviously things are going to change, but we wanted to wait until a little bit later in the week so we had a better idea as to who the starters were. We have all the starters available now, unless things change. So Ellie, let's talk about rules real quick, man. So what are some of the biggest things we need to really focus on here? And we're not going to talk about all the rules, but some basic things that will hurt us or help us when it comes to actually DFS.
So I think the biggest one that jumps out that's going to have an immediate impact really comes down to the rules regarding extra points. So if you haven't heard, XFL, they're getting rid of kicking extra points, and you get the option to go for 1, 2, or 3 points. So obviously that has immediate impacts to DFS. If you've ever watched any of our showdown shows, Tyson and I just love to play kickers. Here we are. We're right back in that territory where kickers are just becoming more and more meaningless.
Yes.
And to those of you who are new to the show, we absolutely can't stand playing kickers. In showdown. So we're open to this, and maybe we'll start hopping in some showdown shows for XFL if we can kind of get some consistency here, and the kicking stuff will matter, but it is going to have direct impacts on what happens to your running backs and wide receivers, right? When you're going for these extra 1, 2, 3 points, those are direct points. It's like scoring a touchdown. You get 6 with a touchdown. You only get 1 yard or whatever for rushing in, but you get a full point for a rushing conversion.
You actually don't get stats. You actually don't get stats.
Say that again.
You don't get any stats.
Oh, my bad.
You only hey, this is why we're here. We're all learning this shit. You don't based on my research, you don't get any stats. You just get the 1 point, or the 2 point, or the 3 points. So if a quarterback throws on a 3-point conversion, which I think is from the 10-yard line, if a quarterback throws to a wide receiver, the wide receiver just gets the 3 points and that's it. Correct me.
You know what? That was my dumbass. I was overthinking that. It wouldn't make sense. You'd have a wide receiver and end up with 4 points on
an extra point. Yeah, exactly.
Anyways.
Yeah. So what else though, dude? Like, okay, so that's a big deal to me. What jumps out to me with that is, first of all, you might see some weird scores. Second of all, you probably are going to see some like lower totals. Like kicking an extra point is a lot easier than running it in from the 1 yard line when everybody knows that you're probably going to run the ball in. So that could affect the overall totals in some of these games, but also it could really help running backs and running quarterbacks. If you see a lot of 1 point conversions, if you get a running back that scores a touchdown, turns around and gets a 1 point extra point, I mean, that could add up over the course of the games. And I know a lot of people are interested in playing wide receivers because we know a lot of these wide receivers, but maybe week 1 we just play a little like an extra running back or two in some of these flex positions that we'll talk about here in a second. And what else though? Like, I know there's like a 1 foot down rule, which kind of matters. Maybe you see some extra wild catches, but it doesn't, it's not affecting my DFS choices necessarily unless we get some crazy acrobatic receivers that we find out about. But what else? What am I missing here? I know there's a lot more, but what else is going to affect this?
So another one that I found notable, this might just be anecdotal, we'll find out as the season goes on, but the play clock is play clock. Let me be clear saying this. The play clock runs for 35 seconds as opposed to the NFL's 40-second play clock. So not to get too galaxy brained about this, but 5 seconds per play, it's 60 seconds or 60 plays per team per game. What is that? 300 seconds roughly per side. So you're looking at another 5 to 10 minutes in game time potentially. So again, like when we get to the overviews, right, or the first look, let's be careful and a bit hesitant with these totals. It is likely that they are still probably high considering these are not necessarily the top tier NFL athletes, but that play clock could result in a couple more offensive possessions, leading to a little bit more points than what we were initially expecting.
Yeah.
And then I think the other big one is either overtime. It's like a shootout, man. Like I don't watch hockey, so anybody who watches hockey, I have a little bit better understanding of this. But each team gets one offensive play per. You have one opportunity to score. If you can't score, the other team gets it. They don't score, then it just keeps going. The one thing I don't know yet, though, is it single elimination, like first person that wins or whatever?
I think so. I think like you alternate. So like you get a chance if you score and the other team doesn't. I think that's it, but I could be wrong. We're gonna find out
like
watching it. Yeah, kind of like college, exactly. Another thing that jumps out to me, dude, is it's the like go for it. Basically a 4th and 15 from your own 25, I believe, after a touchdown in the fourth quarter at any time. Maybe it's only under 2 minutes or something, but I believe in the fourth quarter at any time, if you score a touchdown and you're down, let's just say it's, you're down by 3 or 4 points and you got no timeouts and it's 40 seconds left. Well, instead of having to kick that BS onside kick that usually doesn't happen, you could choose to go for it on 4th and 15, basically one play, and continue your drive, or they just take over from wherever the ball is downed. So that to me, what that means is there's a lot of opportunity for, these games are never quite out of reach because you can go for a 3-point conversion. One possession is now 9 points instead of an 8 point. That kind of makes a big difference. So maybe you're never out of these games. So, if you have a team that's up by 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe they're not going to be sitting their guys. Maybe they're just going to keep pounding the rock or throwing the football. You might not have to worry about it blowout material as much. Anything else we need to talk about, or do you want to get into this DraftKings specific information?
One more thing, and then we can hop into that. So just real quick, and then under 2 minutes, the clock, if the play it blows dead in play in the field, if they don't go out of bounds, the clock keeps running or the clock stops until the ball's been spotted and 5 seconds of run off the play clock. So again, just another one of those opportunities where you're giving the other team an opportunity to kind of hang in there a little bit. And just back to my other point about the play clock being shorter, that obviously only applies when the clock is running. If it's dead ball, you're not getting an additional time in the game. So just point that out.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's look at our rosters here. So DraftKings obviously is going to be the way to go. Big contests. This is for the main slate, the 4-gamer. You got a quarterback, you got a running back position, and then you got a two wide receiver / tight end positions, 2 flex positions, and then a defense. 50K cap, obviously the same rules that you're used to. The biggest difference here is there's not a dedicated tight end position, and there's 2 flex positions. So to me, that makes a big difference. I like it because probably there's only going to be at least to start week 1, there's only 2 or 3 tight ends, maybe probably only 1 tight end that I'm actually interested in playing. So it doesn't force you to have to play the tight end. And having those 2 flex positions allows you to be able to get different enough to be able to choose any position you want. And we're not gonna have to worry about dupes. You're losing a position. You're basically losing a spot or 2 spots, I think. No, it's 1 spot. Is it 2 spots or 1 spot? It's 1 spot
Right.
compared to main slate. So you're losing
I think it's
2. So you're losing it, but you're not having to necessarily worry about dupes as much, which is going to be pretty easy because there's a lot of dudes, like backup dudes that nobody are playing, that can in week 1 can come out and play well. What else is there to talk about here, DraftKings wise? The scoring is all the same. It's PPR. Like I said, you're getting, whoever scores that extra point gets the 1, gets the 2, gets the 3 points, whatever that is. I don't think there's any other big differences, right?
No, man. I think week 1 we're going to kind of go over the strategies that are going to be necessary here. But just real quick, we're probably not going to want to worry about salary as much as we would in NFL. And you'll kind of see why when we start getting through the breakdown. So week 1, just feel it out, play starters, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think you want to overload running backs a little bit more than usual, just given the flexibility that this type of roster construction gives you.
In about 30 minutes or so, hopefully, we're going to try to move through this quick. We'll be back to the screen and we'll be hand building some lineups together after we learn all the players and after we talk about stacks we like. Oh yeah, by the way, that's one thing I did miss. What is your opinion on stacking with the XFL, especially week 1? Like, are you doing a 3-stack with a run back? Probably not. Maybe you're doing a 2-stack at most with a run back. We just don't know. We just don't know if both teams are going to show up. It's kind of hard, for me personally, putting all your eggs in one basket sort of a situation. But hey, there's leverage to be had there. If you stack a game and it's 28-24 or whatever, and that's the highest scoring game, and you have that game stacked, you could get a ton of leverage. But it's risky. So what are your thoughts on stacking?
Yeah, man. So I've been listening to some content around, right? I want to get a feel for what some of my peers or competitors are doing as well. And I think one of the common things to do on a slate like this, or in the XFL where there's a lot of knowns, is maybe go quarterback plus probably 2 pass catchers. And I say pass catchers loosely because that includes running backs in this particular case. This is PPR, right? And we already are a little bit more high in them. And then, wide receiver, tight end. But, I think this is going to be a fun time to actually just go back to the basic NFL stuff, right? I remember where you ran 2-1. That was just the most basic build. You just did a 2-1 stack and then maybe did a 1-1 elsewhere, right? And that's kind of what I'm feeling for some of these games. I know it might sound a little bit crazy, but if both teams are projected to score 20 points, the only way a 2-1 really isn't going to work is if that doesn't happen, if you get shut out 20-0. So you happen to get the one game that hits a 31-21, that might be the highest scoring game. You stack that up 2-1, or even you had the balls to do a 3-1 or a 3-2. You're going to end up beating everybody. And most people are going to end up with a 0. We're going to see some weird shit on XFL. We don't know how they report injuries, right? You could have a guy like Josh Gordon could smoke too much weed Sunday morning
Stay
and then
off
get
the
hit by a bus on his way to
weed.
the stadium, right? So like, and they might try to play him through that. We have no idea, right? So he could come into the thing 75% owned, and that's dumb, right? If there's a place, there's a time to kind of just close your eyes and play stars like that. That's where we're at. And I know I got way off topic on the strategy, but that's kind of what I'm feeling, right? Do the run backs, keep it simple, don't overthink it. I still think going 3-0 is a little bit crazy because nothing is predicted to be anything more than a 2.5 point spread.
Yeah. Hey, that's true. That's a good point. And one way to really like maximize your potential on this slate, maybe it's just to play it safe. Maybe it's to play it safe and you don't have to hit the nuts. You probably aren't going to do it because there's just so many unknowns. So as long as you don't get a 0, you may be okay and you may profit. You may be all right. You might not have to get that perfect lineup week 1. All right, let's go to our first look here. So we made up this graphic here. Obviously, this probably will change as we get closer. This is Thursday night, so there's probably not going to be a whole lot changing unless there's some random injuries. But if you guys want a copy of this, just hop in our Discord. You can just download it. It's just kind of a playbook to kind of see who the quarterbacks are, who the kind of the best guys are on each team, who's favored, who's not, that kind of thing. We're going to go through each game quickly and just kind of talk about the basics. So Vegas Vipers going into Arlington, which Arlington is where the home base is at. You actually have 3 Texas teams at home this week. Arlington's favored by 3 points, which is one of the highest differences here. You have the Orlando Guardians as well that are underdogs in the other game. This is a 37 total, so this is the highest total as of now. And for Vegas, you got Luis Perez, who's kind of a veteran in this alt football world. And for the Arlington Renegades, you do not have Kyle Slaughter. Sorry, I've heard it's 50-50 as to who pronounces it right. I'll call him Slaughter because that's just easier to roll off the tongue. Kyle Slaughter, he's expensive. He was supposed to be the starter, but not quite. Drew Plitt ended up getting the start here. He's $7,300. He's literally $3,000 cheaper. So Arlington Renegades seems like a pretty good stack. But when you look at the Vegas Vipers here, you got Geronimo Allison, which we know from the Packers. You got Martavis Bryant, which we know from the Steelers. And you got Jeff Badette, who's kind of he's a good wide receiver, a good pass catcher in this alt football world. When it comes to Arlington Renegades, one thing that really kind of sucks, in my opinion, I was kind of looking forward to getting the Kyle Slaughter and Sal Cannella stacks. Those guys played last year together. They were both pretty much the best at their positions in the USFL. So I don't know how much, and Cannella's a tight end. So, Cannella's probably the best tight end out there. At least that we could project. So he probably be one of the only tight ends that I'm interested in playing. But what are your thoughts on this game here? I don't know how much, I actually like the Vegas Vipers. It seems to me like they have a pretty decent team. They're pretty deep at wide receiver. Starting running backs, Rod Smith, former Ohio State guy, short NFL career. But the interesting thing to me is Brett Hundley. They brought Brett Hundley in. They paid him a lot of money, and he's not quite ready, or maybe just Perez just balled out. So I kind of like Vegas Viper stacks, but hey, if I'm doing Arlington Renegades stacks, which might be pretty appealing because of the price of the quarterback, I probably will run it back with one of these wide receivers. So thoughts here? Anything else to point out? Anything I missed?
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I think the stacks are pretty solid on both sides of the ball. So, I don't necessarily have the same grasp of the players that you do. But what I'm seeing from this is just the pricing. We pricing mismatch just right out the gate, and that's the kind of stuff that we need to be aware of, especially for week 1. But this is going to continue in the XFL. Throughout the season, because we really don't know what kind of changes that we're going to see. But right off the bat, both these quarterbacks are probably priced closer to 9,000. They're both in the 7K range. So right now, until I see more casual bettors kind of leaning towards, and I don't even know how I would get this information. I'm just going to walk up to people on the street and say, hey, you play DraftKings, or you playing Ben DiNucci this weekend? Like, I don't know how I get this, but like I expect Ben DiNucci to be a high-owned guy, right? Like, imagine getting these guys at 10-15%, where they're a cheap stack that allow you to throw in, all the top floor players. Normally we'd be saying play, the guys with the highest ceiling, but as I pointed out earlier, this might be a slate where you really just don't want your guys getting a zero. If you get 8 points from every position, you might be the optimal because you got points from every position. So look, I like both these quarterbacks, and even if you compare the totals, the spread's not too different from any other game. The total is right in line with every other game, and it's going to stay competitive. So I think that these guys are probably going to be two of my prime options, and we'll get into it more when we look at the price.
And by the way, you got Rod Woodson, head coach of the Vipers. You got Bob Stoops, head coach of the Renegades. So the Renegades have, probably one of the best coaches, at least with a lot of experience. And that kind of makes a difference there. All right, so let's go to the next game. Orlando Guardians going into Houston against the Roughnecks. Orlando is my nearest sort of team. I'm going to probably catch a couple of home games from them this year, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they're going to have a very good year, at least projected. If you just by looking at their roster, they got Paxton Lynch at quarterback. He's got some NFL experience, not necessarily good experience, but hey, NFL experience is NFL experience. They are 3-point underdogs. This is the lowest total on the slate. So to me, I don't know, man. Orlando Guardians, I'm not interested in probably getting a lot of stacks with them. When it comes to the Houston Roughnecks, you got Brandon Silvers is getting the start. So I don't know, man. What are your thoughts here? Looks like Cole McDonald had a chance to start, and maybe he will start eventually. Cole McDonald from Hawaii, high upside guy, pretty interesting. But Brandon Silvers will get the start, and he's pretty cheap, and he's popping with the projections I'm seeing now. He is the highest projected dude on this slate when it comes to quarterbacks, and I think just in general. So he's probably going to be pretty high owned if people are using optimizers. You got a guy, the Roughnecks. The interesting thing about that, they have Wade Phillips as their coach. They got AJ Smith's air raid offense as the offensive coordinator. So it seems to me like they're going to be tossing the ball around quite a bit. You got Max Borghi, who, based on my research, I don't know a lot about him, but the dude had quite a few receptions. He had 85 receptions at Washington State in 2019 as a running back. So we're looking at a guy that probably can get some receptions out of the backfield, which allows me to. I'm interested in him throwing him in stacks. So I don't know, man. I don't know how interested I am in this particular game. This is probably one of my least favorite games, but if I do anything, I'm going with Houston. And the interesting thing to me is Houston Roughnecks defense. They're the cheapest defense on the slate, and they're the second highest projected defense going up against Orlando. So thoughts on this matchup? Are you interested in getting stacks from here?
Normally I might be, again, just given the question marks that we have coming into week one of the XFL, but it's Paxton Lynch. He's priced up. I didn't like him in the NFL. There's a reason why he's in the XFL, and I think I'd rather just play 7,300 plit or 7,600 and stack the Las Vegas Arlington game. I am with you though. I think having some exposure to Houston sacks is interesting. Silvers should do fine in that offense. They're going to throw it a lot. It seems that's one thing that it looks like a lot of people are agreeing on.
Yeah.
But here's another interesting strategy, right? Maybe you make your core the Las Vegas Arlington game and you stack the hell out of that. Houston might be the place where you may grab some pieces, right? He's not going to get 15 to 20 fantasy points, rushing. And if he is, he's going to be the optimal quarterback, and you should have Brandon Silvers in every lineup. But otherwise, he's going to be throwing, a touchdown to somebody. He's going to be handing the ball off, right? Or throwing it to his running back. So grab those pieces. If this is really going to be the offense that puts out 16 points or 15 to 20 points for a quarterback in a 21 point total matchup, then I think you can grab pieces from this and pay up for what will probably be some pretty decently projected guys. So I think this is a game you kind of target pieces of, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one guy I will mention for Orlando is, obviously Terrell Buckley's the coach, doesn't have a ton of experience, but Charleston Rambo seems to be a bright spot for Orlando. He could have a breakout year. Eli Rogers is on this team, but he's not really projecting well. I think he'll be over-owned just because, people will be scanning through the app. They're not going to use an optimizer, and they'll see, ooh, Eli Rogers, he's pretty cheap. I'm going to play him because I know who he is. But I don't see him. He's not projecting well, and I don't see him really getting a ton of volume. Jermaine Martin at running back is interesting. He's getting a pretty good projection. He's like a top 5 when it comes to projection. So I think this game is good for one-offs. If I am doing any Houston Roughnecks stacks, maybe we run it back with Rambo. That may be the only guy I would run it back with, but probably not running back at all. All right, so let's go to the St. Louis Battlehawks at San Antonio Brahmas. Looks like the home team is favored in this one as well. The Brahmas, is that right? Hang on, let me double check this. Is that right? No, that's wrong. I think it's the other way around. I think the Battlehawks are favored. Can you double check that for me? Yeah, that's my bad. Actually, here. No, I don't have that up. I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic and I messed that up. But the Brahmas, St. Louis Battlehawks, you have AJ McCarron, which we know him. When you're talking about a guy who, he's got NFL experience, man. He's been in the league for a while, and he's one of these quarterbacks that you could pretty much, count on starting day in and day out, unless he just starts out really bad. But to me, the Battlehawks here are very interesting. They are favored. I know they are, and I know they're 2.5 point favorites. I just messed that up. Marcel Aitman for the Battlehawks. I think he's going to be one of the top wide receivers this year, potentially. And I think he's like one of the highest price. He's the highest priced wide receiver on the slate. So Marcel Aitman to me is interesting. I like him with one-offs, but if you're going AJ McCarron stacks, obviously throw Aitman in there. And then you got a guy like Hakeem Butler. Now, Ellie and I know a little bit about Hakeem Butler, former Cardinal, who was drafted by the Cardinals. Didn't really make it, but man, I've always loved this guy. I've always tried to fit him in. Hakeem Butler is kind of a tight end. He came in as a wide receiver and then converted to tight end. I don't know how they're going to use him, but he's a big dude. He's one of these guys that you throw it to the corner of the end zone and you can pretty much trust that he's going to catch it. So I think he's got high upside, and not a lot of people are talking about him. When it comes to the Brahmas, we got Cohen as the quarterback here. Jack Cohen, former Notre Dame quarterback. He's getting the start. So I don't know, man. Like, the interesting thing here for the Brahmas, we got Hines Ward as the coach. Kalen Ballage is getting the start over Jaquez Patrick. Jaquez Patrick was the first-round pick for San Antonio. So the fact that Kalen Ballage is getting the start, I'm really interested in him as one-off. He's super cheap, which we'll get into here in a minute. But as a one-off play and in stacks with Jack Cohen, I'm interested in him because he's going to catch the ball. He's a former ASU guy, was bouncing around the league, had some decent years. I think he played with Miami for at least a few years. But I think Kalen Ballage is a really interesting guy. Hines Ward, I've watched some interviews with him, and he keeps talking about Kalen Ballage. So I think we got to try to fit him in. I think that's the big deal here. So thoughts on this matchup here? Battlehawks, I think, is probably the way to go. They are favored. I messed that up. But thoughts on some of these other guys here?
Look, I think I'm with you on the Kalen Ballage take. If anybody knows anything about running backs, it's going to be Hines Ward, other than running backs and a bunch of other people. But anyways, look, Hines Ward was one of the best run blocking, just one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL, in addition to what he was as a great wide receiver in general. So I would imagine if he's talking up Kalen Ballage, we'll see him. And let's not forget Kalen Ballage, a ASU alum, with what he had like some dumb shit with like 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns in an NFL game for no reason.
Yeah.
Was it Miami? Anyways.
Yeah, he was on Miami, I believe.
What was that? Yeah, he was on
yeah.
Miami. Bro, Ronnie Brown too. Hey, really weird that team just puts random people out there to score touchdowns. But look, Kalen, in week 1, I expect running backs to get a little bit heavier workload. I expect Kalen Ballage to get some run. I like him, man. And you know, I agree with you. I think generally you can probably lean towards the home teams for most of these games, except for probably the one we're going to talk about next. I think the one we're going to talk about next is kind of a little bit weird. It's kind of fucked up, to be honest, right? Like, I didn't realize the other 3 games were all in Texas, where they're practicing.
Yeah.
And then in Washington, they got to fly out there. They all got to fly out there to that game. So there's no home advantage.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this because we got the Nooch.
Ben DiNucci.
I'm interested in him, man. Ben DiNucci. You got the Seattle Sea Dragons going into DC to play the Defenders. Look, you got some pretty damn good wide receivers on this team. You got Josh Gordon.
Stay off the weed.
And you got Juwan Green. So I'm interested in getting a ton of Sea Dragons stacks. It's probably going to be really high owned. Like Ben DiNucci and Josh Gordon together are going to be incredibly high owned. But I think we can get different enough to where it doesn't matter. You just want to play the best plays. DC Defenders. So the interesting thing here with them is you got Jordan Ta'amu, who he's got the rushing upside. He's got the RPO rushing upside. And Fred Kais is the offensive coordinator. He's got a great rushing attack, and they do a lot of RPO. So to me, this feels like I hate to even compare, but this kind of feels like a Ravens Lamar Jackson sort of situation here when it comes to stacking. Maybe you go naked Jordan Ta'amu, or maybe you go Abram Smith with Jordan Ta'amu and just focus on the run game here for these guys. Abram Smith is the first overall pick in the XFL draft for position players. He's kind of the top rated running back across the board. He's getting the highest projection, probably be the highest owned. But you put him and Jordan Ta'amu together. I know it's not necessarily positively correlated, but I think that's where a lot of this offense probably can come from here. So what are your thoughts on this matchup? This is kind of a pick 'em. It's an okay total. Not that really matters at all at this point. I mean, these numbers are just kind of tossed out of Vegas's ass. I'm pretty sure. But I am interested in getting DC Defender stacks and then running it back with Josh Gordon, and getting DC Defender stacks, or getting Seattle stacks and running it back maybe with the running back. So thoughts here?
Yeah, man, I agree. I think Ben DiNucci is actually a pretty interesting stack, especially with them being if they're really a 1-point underdog. That's kind of interesting to me. The one thing I would like to be mindful of is, there's going to be a handful of names that people know. Goddamn, there's going to be a handful of names that people know. And Ben DiNucci is going to be one of them. Josh Gordon for sure is going to be one of them. So I do expect that stack to be a little popular. So that's why I like your point. Kind of make sure you're running back if you're doing something like that, or you're adding somebody else in. And as far as the naked, or the stacking quarterback with a running back, I actually don't mind that strategy at all on something like this. Again, we don't have a single. We had one game projected over 20 points. It was like, you're one team projected for over 20 points, and it's barely. Everything's within 3 points. So you're talking about 2 touchdowns in 1 3-point conversion. Or whatever. So, if that's a running back and a quarterback, then you need to have all those guys. So, I'm right there with you, and I think we're going to see some interesting lineups when we get there.
Yeah, if this is an RPO offense that they're really, really focused on running the ball, those 2 guys I'm really interested in, and I think him as a running back, I'm interested in him probably the most besides Kalen Ballage, just because of his price. All right, so now Ellie, what do you think about for the breakdown? I know we talked about going team by team, but we kind of already did. Do you want to just run by position and just kind of talk about the salaries briefly? I think that's probably the way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think that'd be the quickest, man.
All right, let's get into this breakdown.
Break it down.
All right, so let's start with quarterback here. We're going to try to fly through this. We're about 35 minutes into the show. Sorry, guys. Brandon Silvers right now is the highest projected quarterback. That could change, obviously. He's 8,200. That's a good price. You got AJ McCarron, who probably is going to be very, very popular. He might be more popular than the Nooch. AJ McCarron here, we all kind of, we all remember him for one way or another, but
what a beautiful woman. Wow.
Darnell Dockett. You remember that, bro?
Darnell Dockett. Yeah, exactly. That was really fun. Drew Plitt getting the start for Arlington. He's 7,300. I mean, that price is insane. And he's projected pretty high. Jack Cohen, 8,500. Ben DiNucci, 9,800. Look, I sorted by projection here. I'm not going to give away, these sites' projections, but you can at least get an idea where these guys are. Ben DiNucci is not projecting great, and I know they're all pretty close, so I'm not going to take too much. If there's a big gap, then maybe I'll think about it. But we're all like basically within a point or two, all these guys. But Ben DiNucci is going to be very popular, and maybe maybe you get off of Ben DiNucci in a handful of lineups if you're doing a 20 max or something. Maybe you get 15% Ben DiNucci stacks, and the rest are other guys, and you just run it back with their top wide receivers to try to capture any of those points. Jordan Ta'amu's 9,600, which he's a name, so I think he's going to be high owned. Luis Perez is a name as well. He's 7,700 though, because he was projected to not start. So that's interesting to me. 7,700, that's a pretty good stack. You got good wide receivers for Las Vegas. They're going to throw the ball quite a bit. Paxton Lynch at 8,900 is basically the last starting quarterback when it comes to projections. I'm not super interested in getting Orlando stacks. So what are you thinking here, man? If we're building our lineups, the quarterback's the first guy we're starting with. Find our quarterback, match him with the stack that we want, throw a run back in potentially, and then go from there. Where are we going here, man? I personally, obviously, I like the Nooch. I'm going to do some Ben DiNucci stacks and try to get different otherwise. But Brandon Silvers is coming up a ton, and I'm kind of interested in getting some of him. And maybe some Drew Plitt and Luis Perez. So thoughts here?
Yeah, I would add something to kind of give you different than that, but with the kind of the changes that we're expecting, and with Perez starting, with Plitt starting, I think my player pool quarterback will be exclusively Silvers, Plitt, and Perez. I just can't justify maybe a little bit of Cohen and 8,500, but again, even the point per dollar, you're still better off just playing Silvers or Plitt, or even Perez, right? The variance on these projections isn't high enough to really to really justify paying 10-5 for AJ McCarron.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
If it was different, if we had the original starters and the salary, again, this is a mispricing. These are the things that we can take advantage of immediately, and you can still go get, stack Silvers with his top two targets, and then go get AJ McCarron's top target, right? If he's projected for 15 fantasy points, again, that means somebody is the beneficiary of that. So, I think I'm going to be exclusive with Silvers, Plitt, Perez, and maybe sprinkle in a little Cone. Yeah, I was excited to play Ben DiNucci after 2.5 years, but I won't. I'm not going to play Jordan, and I'm not going to play McCarron, man. There's just no reason to stack the hell out of these guys with those cheap-ass quarterback practices.
I think McCarron is interesting simply because I like Marcel Aitman. So if you do just a two stack with McCarron and Aitman together, and then maybe sort of mini stack some of these other games without the quarterback, that could be a pretty good option, because you're going to get some ownership on McCarron, you're going to get some ownership on Aitman, but you can get a little different in the flex. Well, I guess there's no flex because we're not doing showdown, but you know what I mean. All right, so let's go to running back here. So I'm not going to get into this too much here. There's a lot of dudes. I am not familiar with all these guys. Let's just be honest here. But we do know about Abram Smith. He's 7,900. He's the highest priced dude. You got Jermaine Martin for Orlando, like I had mentioned in the earlier part, the first look. He's an interesting guy. And then look, you got Kalen Ballage. pass catcher. He's going to be popular. People recognize his name. People played him in DFS for the NFL. They're going to play him again, and he's a good play. He's 4,800. I'm going to play him in cash if I'm doing single entries. He's going to be in there. But let's look at Max Borghi here. Remember, I had mentioned he's a decent pass catcher. He's projected pretty good for Houston. I'm interested in him. Brian Hill for St. Louis is an interesting guy. NFL experience. He had 25 receptions for the Falcons in 2020. To me, that is interesting, and I will include him in McCarron stacks as well, maybe just a little bit. Let's see. There's not a whole lot. Look, Nick Hawley is also getting a pretty decent projection for Houston. Maybe that will change. But, Jaquez Patrick at 7,800, the fact that he's not starting, I'm not super interested in him. I think the guys that we really want to focus are the guys that we just kind of mentioned. And I wouldn't mind getting Abram Smith, Max Borghi lineups, Abram Smith, Balaj. I think that's going to be pretty popular, Abram Smith and Balaj. So don't go putting that stack in with a Ben DiNucci, Josh Gordon stack. I mean, you can if you're doing cash potentially, but I'd rather, we got to try to kind of get a little different because you could, if you can get a 1% owned dude who scores a touchdown, it's very possible in this week. So maybe we want to focus on not getting all of these typical roster constructions thrown in there. But anybody jump out to you here for running back? I don't really think I'm going to go super heavy. I probably try to get 2 running backs in a lineup this week because I know the volume is going to be there for these guys, as opposed to trying to find some of these second string wide receivers to throw in. Obviously Balaj is badass, so we're probably going to want to play him since he's starting. So, but what are your other thoughts here? I think Abram Smith and the defense together is a nice stack because of that price point. But what are your thoughts, man?
So Abram Smith's a great place to start. He's DC, right? And plus that defense. And again, I think that game is going to be interesting to target for running, in addition to what we covered earlier. But they're the only team that's traveling, so maybe they play it a little bit safer because they got to fly back to practice in Texas again, right? I don't understand the dynamic fully. Maybe that's not the case, but
I'm pretty sure you're right. I'm pretty sure you're right. That's where everybody's at. That's the hub. I'm 99% sure you're right. Please cuss us out and call us assholes, idiots in the comments if we're wrong, because we're all learning this shit. This was a crash course for us. So please help us out in the comments if we're wrong, and we'll fully admit that. But I think you're right, dude.
So, just to kind of get back to my main point, look, in the grand scheme of things, normally I'd be the guy touting play wide receivers when you're in doubt, play wide receivers because they get the PPR bonus. But we know what the NFL looks like, and we could expect these teams to be conservative, especially with some of the there's some actual NFL pedigree in the coaching here, right? So, if you're teaching a bunch of people how to play semi-pro football, one of the first things you're going to do is don't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
How do you do that? You run the ball effectively.
Control the clock.
Given the prices, right? Like Kalen Balaj, Borghi, even Brian Hill, 5,800, Brendan Knox, 5,500. All these guys are still priced decently. We're going to get enough savings in quarterback that I don't think we're going to be too tight for pricing anywhere else. So I think you might be able to get different, but by maybe even going 3 running backs as opposed to 2.
Yeah.
Fuck it, play 4 if you can. I don't know if that's possible, but
no, you can't.
It might be the safest position this weekend. So I like the running back. I think all these guys are in play. The totals are all low enough to justify playing any single one of them in the starting role. I just think you got to get some decent exposure to some of the names, right? Kalen Balaj at 4,800 though does open up for nice value.
Yeah, and don't sleep on Max Borghi because I think he can get some receptions. All right, wide receivers. So obviously Josh Gordon is the man. 9K. How much does he have left in the tank? I have no clue. He's the highest, second highest priced wide receiver on the slate, highest projected. And then you got guys like, I don't know if this is accurate with the projection, but Geronimo Allison's projecting really well. He's 7K. on that Vegas team with Perez. He's got some other really good wide receivers along with him. So I don't know if that hurts him or helps him. They can't cover all three dudes. So maybe that helps him. I don't know, but he's projecting really well. Brandon Arconado, for Arlington is 4,700. I think he's got to be involved in your cash lineups probably. You know, I don't know maybe not. We don't really know a whole lot about him, at least I don't. But he's projecting well. He's $4,700. Marcel Aitman is one of these guys I think you play as a one-off or with your AJ McCarron stacks, like I said. I for now, I think let's keep it there. Obviously, as we get closer to lock, we'll start to talk about some of these guys. Martavis Bryant, he's 8,900. But like I said, Vegas wide receivers are pretty stacked. You got Jeff Badet, Martavis Bryant, and you got our boy Geronimo Allison here. So I personally think Martavis Bryant is going to be very high owned. I don't know that he warrants that. His price is high and his ownership is high. I think he's a cash guy along with him and Josh Gordon. Just because the ownership's there. But I think in tournaments, I'm fading Martavis Bryant. And if I'm doing any Perez stacks for Vegas, I'm definitely rolling with Badet and Geronimo Allison. I think that's my strategy here. So thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to some extent here. I think what I'm going to be doing mostly here is I'm going to be kind of jamming in these top two guys. I like Josh Gordon. I like Geronimo Allison. And, we're going to be saving a little bit on quarterback. We're going to be saving a little bit on running back because we got guys like Kalen Ballage and even, damn it, I can't remember his name, but even the other guy who's like 5,600, Mark Berger or whatever.
Borgie.
Yeah, him. I think there's going to be enough so that you can save, right? And then 4,700 for Brandon Arcianato. Again, I think that's viable. But look, I think the key here is right. Eliminate your opportunity to make too many mistakes here. This is where stacking comes in perfectly, right? Yeah. If you choose the right quarterback, you're probably going to end up with one of the right receivers at some point.
Yeah,
like you're guessing less, right? You're not by not having a naked quarterback. If you're running a quarterback, try and stack in a couple wide receivers. For one-offs, that's when you kind of bust in Josh Gordon, or you make sure that some of the higher projected guys are kind of filling in those one-off spots if it's outside of a stack. But otherwise, man, like, if you're running a Las Vegas stack, grab the quarterback, grab Josh Gordon, grab their fucking 4th-string wide receiver. I know it might sound crazy, but he might be the guy that ends up getting wide receiver 2 run. We don't know. He could just be in the coach's good graces. So I think you just stack it up, man. Get exposure to the offenses that you like. Again, I think I'm going to prioritize the first 3 games just because they're all in Dallas. It's the only one that's not going to require actual travel. And then just stack the hell out of them, man. And who is this Blake Jackson, though, at 3,800, man? If he's really projected for the same amount of goddamn points as some of these other guys,
he's close. That could change. Obviously, maybe there's a glitch in the system here. But Blake Jackson for Seattle, along with DiNucci and Gordon there, that really evens things out when it comes to salary, and especially if you throw in. You throw in some of these cheap running backs. Blake Jackson, 3,800. I don't know anything about him. If you know something about him, throw him in the comments. I'll do some research on him after this. But 3,800 for Seattle, that's exactly what you're talking about, though. Start with your quarterback, find the 2 wide receivers or pass catchers that you want to throw with them, or even more, even potentially 1 run back from the other team, potentially. And that's where you start. And then I think guys like Marcel Aitman, any of these Vegas guys, any of these Seattle guys, you can use as one-offs. And then don't forget about Charleston Rambo as well. And even a guy like Juwan Green for Seattle is an option. Jalen Tolliver, Landon Akers for San Antonio. I'm just throwing out names at this point. But I think that the key here is getting the stacks set up and alternating wide receivers. If you're doing Ben DiNucci stacks, you don't have to have Josh Gordon with him. Maybe you use Blake Jackson and Juwan Green instead. That could be a way to go. Anything else for wide receivers you want to move on?
While you're pulling up tight end, I just want to say one thing. So when you have a guy like Blake Jackson at 3,800 who's projected similar to the big guys. Just be careful your optimizer isn't spitting out 95% of them if that's what you're using.
Yes.
You need to pay attention, especially in week 1 when you have very low price guys with even high median projections. They're going to get jammed into every lineup if you're not paying attention.
Make sure you cap these guys at a comfortable rate. And if we do end up getting ownership projections, make sure you're not too crazy with some of these dudes, unless you really have a good feeling about them. So I'm only going to talk about 2 guys here. Sal Cannella from Arlington. I think he gets a little bit of a decrease. I was going to go super heavy on him if Kyle Slaughter was starting. He's not. I don't think that means a huge difference, but those 2 guys have, it would be the equivalent. I hate to make this reference, but just bear with me. If Patrick Mahomes wasn't starting, maybe Kelsey. Obviously, Kelsey gets a decrease, but those guys are like, they know each other well. They can, you know what I'm trying to say. Sal Cannella, 5,400. Yeah. I still like him. I don't know how much I'm going to get because there's a lot of value. And then Garrett Owens for Houston is projecting well. I think maybe you can get a little bit of him. I don't think I'm going to go too crazy with him, but he's one of the top projected tight ends on the slate. Let's move on. Let's talk about defense. So I think the key here is to focus on not getting too heavy on one defense. We don't know what defenses are going to be good. We don't know, it's still the same as the NFL as far as you're going to need sacks. You're going to need some turnovers, most likely. A lot of these teams are probably only going to give up, less than 20 points. That's what Vegas is telling us. So a lot of these teams are going to be bunched together when it comes to their fantasy output. So to me, I really am. This is going to be the last position I pretty much pick if I'm hand building, but I want to cap all these teams. I don't want to get too over the field or too over committed to any of these single defenses. Look, the Houston Roughnecks going up against Orlando at $3K, the minimum here, the lowest price defense. I like them a lot. I'm going to try to cap them just to make sure, because you never know. Orlando could come out and score, or maybe just Houston just doesn't have any sacks or anything, and they're just kind of an average defense. But to me, I really feel like just use your gut. If you're using an optimizer, cap them off at maybe 20% or 15%. Try boost up the randomness. Try to get a lot of different defenses here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of agree to that. The one thing, and this might be a little bit bolder than my colleagues, but I just can't justify paying anything over 3,500. So I think I'm going to cut anything above the defenders off my player pool. There's just no reason to, right? You got 4,800 for the Renegades, and they should be we're talking about a touchdown projection difference, right? If you had a running back who was, 2,000 difference, right? That's a significant point change.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I again, this might be the one week where I actually might have 95% of the Roughnecks defense, or some shit like that, just because they're so cheap, man.
Yeah, I feel you, man. And you're right. If all these teams are bunched together within a couple of points of each other, the price difference could make that a huge, absolutely huge difference there. If I'm doing single entry or cash, I'm putting Roughnecks in. If I'm doing bullets into that big contest, I'm obviously not maxing that out, but I'm probably going to do 3 or 4 lineups into that. I'm probably going to have Roughnecks in all those, just because I really want to get some of these higher price stacks along with the studs that are expensive. Mix in some Ballage, mix in some Cannella maybe as value, or some of these second string wide receivers in my stacks. And having the Roughnecks really does help. So. All right, let's get into, let me find this real quick. We're going to get into our lineup builds here. So we appreciate you guys joining us. Please forgive us. It's week 1. If we kind of mess up some of these names, if we kind of mix up some of these teams a little bit, we're going to get better every week. We're going to be hard at this, just like we were with NFL. NFL comes a lot easier for us because we've been watching that shit since we were 3 years old. So we kind of know all these players. We're very familiar. So we're going to learn these players a lot over the course of the next few weeks for sure. But for week 1, hey, we got to put out a show. Let's just do it, right? So let's go to our lineup builds here. So I'm really interested in building kind of a cashy type build based on what we're looking at with the value, based on what we're looking at with what we think the ownership is going to come in at. What do you think that the cash sort of like, we probably don't have to do, a 2, or you probably don't have to do a 3 stack. We probably can do a quarterback with maybe one pass catcher and spread ourselves out. What are your thoughts on that? Do you want to do a 3 stack, or what do you think?
I got to shift my man back to cash because I'm feeling a little crazy on this slate. But look, yeah, I think you're right on. I think going 2-0 is probably the ideal way to start building for cash. I think prior to kind of understanding the price differences between some of these quarterbacks, I would say probably Ben DiNucci and what is it?
You could go
Josh Gordon.
Yeah, or you could do Brandon Silvers because he's so damn cheap and his point per dollar value, and he's going up against Orlando. So that team doesn't seem as strong to me to start the year. So I think you're right though. I think let's start with Ben DiNucci and Josh Gordon, and we'll start plugging in some of these other scrubs. So let's put in Ben DiNucci. Let's throw in Josh Gordon. I do want to get Abram Smith in here. And then probably let's just go Roughnecks right off the bat, right? With the defense. You want to just plug that in and then we can see where we're at?
Yeah, that's fine.
And obviously you could go DC Defenders. They're only $500 more. You could kind of get that that running back defense sort of mini stack there. But let's go with the Roughnecks to start. All right, so now we got to do Kalen Ballage, I think. He's an incredible value. He's getting the start. He's going to be high owned, which is we want to have these higher owned players in these cash stacks. You don't need to ship out of 20,000 people. You probably just need to get in the top 50%. So wide receiver / tight end, and then one more flex spot. We got about 7,700 a pop. So maybe we go mid range. Maybe we do like a Marcel Aitman. He is expensive. So I think that's a pretty good option there. And that leaves us 6,300 for a flex. So where does that put us? Let's look. So 6,300, let's see. You got Brian Hill. So this is where
I like Brian Hill, man.
Yeah, this is where our running back stuff comes in here. So you got Brian Hill there. You're only leaving 500 on the table. That's pretty good. I like that. I'm going to save that. But also you got a guy like Sal Cannella here at tight end. He's probably going to be higher owned. Just people kind of know him. He was the best tight end in the league last year. So that is a pretty decent cash build just to start out. I think that has high floor and high upside, along with high ownership. So we're going to leave that as is. That would probably be somewhere similar. Obviously, we're going to change things up as we get closer. But do you want to get into building some tournament stacks here?
Yeah, let's build a tournament stack. Let's just go straight to our boy. So I do want to make a point. So I'm probably going to go with this Ben DiNucci cash lineup because of what I was talking about when we're going with the quarterbacks, right? I'm probably not going to be playing any expensive quarterbacks. I might play H.A. McCarron just because I like Alabama, right? And you do one at a salute. But let's go with what's his name? $8,400 guy.
Oh yeah.
I'll get their names down, guys. I promise.
Kyle, no, not Kyle Slater. What the hell? Silvers, yes. Silvers. Brandon Silvers. Let's put Brandon Silvers in. Houston. So we got to find our Houston guy here. Maybe we go Max Borghi, running back. I don't know.
Absolutely go Max Borghi.
Let's do
Max Borghi, and then let's throw in Garrett Owens. Let's just fucking do it because that's his tight end. Look, man, we're doing GPP. I'm going to tell you guys straight up. I'm going to be stacking and I'm going to be running back. You might disagree with me here, but I like it, right? If this game goes off, you've got the run back and it's going to be
nobody's going to stack this game either because.
Oh, yeah. Not this one because it's Orlando. My bad.
But hey, you got Rambo. Somebody's got to catch some balls. I mean, unless they're going to score at least a touchdown or two. So, John Rambo over here would be a decent run back. You're heavily into this game, but if you're doing 20 plus lineups, like I have a shitload of lineups. I got the mini max, and I've got another 80 lineups and 20 maxes mixed in. So I will have this. Like this is a pretty decent line. Nobody's gonna play this shit. As far as with a run back. So we got 8,200 a pop for 3 positions. We can do whatever the hell we want. So I think we need to, because of the low owned nature of this lineup, I think we stack in some studs. You probably want to go with Josh Gordon here, throw him in, or you can find your own guy that you like the most that's expensive and put him in. I don't think there's any reason. I mean, we could leave money on the table, but like Kalen Ballage situation is up there, or we can, grab a guy like Marcel Aitman, who we know is probably gonna, would be a pretty good option and has some high upside. And then that leaves us with we have money left on the table. Like that's where we're at right now. We have so much money. Like we have 6,500 remaining. So any defense you want, and then just leave money on the table. This is nice. This is pretty nice. It's risky, but it's nice. I'll just because I can, I'll throw in the Renegades, but you probably want to go with one of these cheaper ones and just leave money on the table. Do you agree with that? Do you want any changes to this lineup?
So look, because salary is not an option, you're probably just going to run a bunch of variations similar to this. But instead of Ottoman, I probably put in a running back, right? I don't know if I'm going to necessarily go two wide receivers in the flex positions. But yeah, man.
What about instead of Owens, we go with somebody else. We go with a little bit more expensive wide receiver for Houston. Let's see. We got Travell Harris is projected up there. He's 6,600. I mean, I guess it's right around the same price. So you would just kind of rotate these guys out. But that leaves you a little bit closer to the salary there. You got 3,800 left. So you go with the defense, you grab defenders, you grab roughnecks, you rotate some of these out, and you go from there. Let's move on.
Or go like this. Move Adaman into that Harris position. Aitman, my bad.
Let's see. Into the Harris position. Okay.
Yeah, move him there. And then we have flex. We can go running back there if we want to.
You're right. 7,400 for a running back. Obviously, you got Jermaine Martin, who's projecting well. That's probably where you'd want to go. Leave a couple $100 on the table.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to some other stacks. So the silver stack is pretty decent. I might end up just going like a 2 stack with that, maybe a 2-0, and then force in a bunch of other guys, a bunch of other studs. But let's start with somebody else here. Do you want to try like a Jordan Ta'amu stack, or do you want to go with Perez or McCarron? What are you thinking?
Let's go Jordan Ta'amu, and then let's try and do what we said. Let's just do him, the running back, and then kind of build that way.
Yeah, I agree. Abram Smith, that's nice.
Defense.
Yeah, and then let's throw the defender's defense in there. It's an interesting stack. It's not one that people are going to do. It's not necessarily correlated, the running back and the defenses, but you got to treat Jordan Ta'amu like a little bit more of a running back in this situation. All right, so let's go with some of the studs. Let's get Josh Gordon. So that's a run back. So now you got a 3-1 run back here, which is nice. Let's go. I mean, look, Geronimo Allison, he's screaming at me here in the projections.
Do it.
Let's throw him in. And let's go with running back now. So let's go with Ballage. And
I mean,
we
can
get
literally
Abrams.
play anyone you want, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's no salary limitations here. There really isn't.
Right.
8,200. You can go with any of these guys, man. There's plenty of dudes to grab. So fill in that last spot, with whoever you want. That's decent. It's a decent stack. Maybe we go instead of Allison. Let's see. Let me look at this. So Josh Gordon. Let's go Martavis Bryant because he's more. Let's try that. Let's try Martavis Bryant. We got to get some of him. Let's go with Kalen Ballage. 9,800 for 2 spots. Let's put our defense in. Let's go Roughnecks because they're cheap and they're going up against Orlando. 6,800. Where does that get us?
Let's be let's be smart here, or big brain here, galaxy brain. Let's throw in let's stack up that Las Vegas game. Throw in Brandon Nato, and then you got a 1-1 there too.
Wait, say that again.
I know stack.
You cut out. Say that again.
Throw in Brandon Arconado in that flex spot.
Okay.
From
yep,
Arlington.
There he is. 2,100.
So it might be risky to kind of do stuff like this because we really don't know. But again, I still think this is the safest strategy. You've got your 2-1 game stack, right, with DC and Ta'amu, Smith, and Gordon. You got Martavis Bryant, and then Brandon Arconado, whatever the fuck his name is, as a 1-1, and then San Antonio Houston.
Yeah,
so
some of these mini stacks.
It's about guessing less. Right. Just get the one thing right, and the other stuff should fall into place.
Exactly. All right. I think that's going to be it for this particular episode here. As we get closer to lock, obviously we're going to want to keep our eye on Twitter. We're going to want to keep our eye on some of these Twitter accounts that we really trust. There's a guy, the Markcast, that I've been really watching on YouTube, as well as following on Twitter. So we'll be posting a lot of his stuff, his tweets directly into our Discord. You got XFL Outsider. I'm sure there's plenty more. I'll post a couple in the links below that you're going to want to be following. Or if you don't want to deal with that, just join our Discord and we'll have a bunch of those links already posted. But we want to keep an eye on some news. We want to keep an eye on some injury news. There's not a ton of, I saw some injury reports. There's nothing really jumps out to me as holy shit, this guy is questionable. Who's his backup sort of situation, but you never know what could happen. So what do you think, man? This is our first show. This is our first time sort of building for the XFL. It seems like there's no salary limitations. It seems to me, without ownership projections, I can already sort of figure out what that kind of cashy build is going to be and where the ownership is going to come in. So for me, that allows me to go out and build stacks that I know are not going to be high owned. If you have a stack that has a total ownership of less than 10% or something that has high upside, you can do whatever the hell you want in the other positions. You can play the Josh Gordons, you can play the Martavis Bryants, you can play the Abram Smiths, you can play whoever you want that's going to be high owned, and focus on your stacks. That's it. If you want to get risky with it, if you have a ton of lineups, if you're doing the big contest, you probably want to do a 3 stack with a run back potentially. That's probably where you're going to get a lot of your leverage. If you're doing a single entry with a couple hundred people in it, you don't need to necessarily do that. You probably want to spread yourselves out with a lot of these, with a lot of the big name guys and the higher owned guys. So anyways, Ellie, what do you think, man? How do we do? I feel pretty good about this. If you don't have an optimizer, I highly suggest you getting one. I mean, look, I use Fantasy Cruncher through Stochastic. If you're interested in joining that, we'll have a link down below that you guys can join and get off your membership. I'll put the details down below. But there's plenty of other sites out there. What is there? Run the Sims. That seems.
Roto Grinders.
Yeah,
all kinds.
Roto Grinders. Establish the Run. They have some stuff. So look, I think it's a good investment to throw it on $50 for the month. Play through the month using the projections, see how you do. I think there's a lot of opportunity to win some decent money because it's kind of the wild west out here, man. So this would be the first couple weeks would be the time to do that. So thoughts, Ellie? What do you think?
Yeah, man. Look, just keep it real simple, guys. Don't overthink this weekend. One thing I will say though is if you think some dude on the street knows his game, he's probably getting played on in DFS. So don't hesitate to get weird. This is the time to throw everything in the trash. Right? Everyone's projected for about the same amount of points. Everything's within 3-point spread. So who knows what's actually going to happen? If you have a gut feeling, don't hesitate to bet on it. And look, last piece of information, right? You're probably going to end up with a 0 in your lineup. That's why I'm not opposed to stacking. You game stack, fuck the whole lineup. I'll let all 4 of them get 0s. I don't give a shit, right? But if that game stack is one that goes off, it could be the one thing that you did differently as opposed to the field, while everyone else is kind of playing it safe and jamming in just the raw points. So that's how I'm going to be approaching it. Hopefully it doesn't change up too much week to week, but we'll be here to adjust for that. Hope everyone has luck. If you have any questions, we'll keep adjusting. This is going to come right down a lot, guys. We're going to need for every game too. This is going to be late swap. We're going to be adjusting each game as they change.
Late swap.
Stay engaged, set your lineups, and forget about them. It's probably not going to work out the greatest.
Yeah, don't be afraid of late swap. That's important, and keep an eye on any news that may be changing. If you have projections, keep refreshing those projections. Keep recrunching. Bring your lineups into a late swap optimizer, and Sunday morning, try re-optimizing, because some of those projections can change on the Sunday games. So just keep an eye on that. We appreciate you guys. Throw us a like. Subscribe, help us out. We're going to be, we plan on doing, unless the XFL collapses or DraftKings just doesn't have any good context, we're going to do this every week. So if you're into that, throw us a subscribe. Let's get to 50 likes for this video. We really appreciate that. We will see you next week. And I think next week, after we see some games, we're going to do like a more of a evergreen sort of content and video that we'll put out there. We'll see you guys later.